Tonight is a continuance from December 16th public hearing. And this includes Bladen's Ridge application by Seymour Springs LLC to conduct a regulated activity application permit for activity in impact to disturbance of wetlands, watercourse, and/or setback, and for the water management plan review to facilitate the development of a residential community known as Bladen's Ridge. Counselor?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Lisa Feinberg. I'm an attorney with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. I have some folks from my team with me, Maureen Cox, my partner, Jerry Kiley, representative of the applicant, John Paul Garcia from John Paul Garcia and Associates, our engineer of record, and Kate Throckmorton from Environmental Land Solutions. And you're used to seeing Mr. Matt Pop, and they are partners. So last time we were here, we did a full presentation. You heard from Mr. Garcia. You also heard from Mr. Nesteriak. And I believe where we left things off was essentially you asked that the two engineers get together and have a discussion and hopefully a meeting of the minds so that we could come back to you with that. The two gentlemen did get together and had a productive conversation. We submitted some revised drawings after that conversation in response to the comments that Mr. Nesteriak provided. And I'd like John Paul to walk you through those comments now, if that's okay with you.
That'd be great.
We've had a number of discussions, Brian and I had a discussion, and out of that discussion came a number of changes. What we did was, first change was we changed all the grid separators to a hydrodynamic type separator. So in front of all 6 stormwater management systems, we now have a hydrodynamic separator rather than just a standard grid change. The second is we changed the lowest stormwater management system from an underground system to an infiltration basin. Third thing is, at the request of P&Z, we were asked to put in here a swale, which we did, and it's shown on the drawing. It's just below the stores, the snow storage area. That's There's, at the request of P&Z, they asked us to put a drainage swale, I'm sorry.
Yep, you can see it.
Below the snow storage area, which is in this location, to pick up any snow melt so it doesn't go on the neighbor's property, and we directed it to the catch basin. And then he asked us to revise the phasing plan to swap phases 4 and 6, which we did. That's shown on sheet 10. And that's not a big change. That's just a matter of just swapping out. He asked us to, this was originally listed as phase 6, and we now changed that to phase 4. This is now phase 6. We also have in bright bold letters on every sheet that this entrance is only to be used as an emergency entrance. Once it's constructed, it'll be gated off and will be used for an entrance and exit in the case of emergency. This will be the main entrance in and out. So those are the basic overall changes that we made. Hydrodynamic separators, infiltration ponds, trench, and make sure that everybody understands that this is a one-way in and one-way out emergency access only. And that's basically it. Those are all the, I met with Brian, we went over this, and I guess it's about as good as he's going to like it. It's the best I can tell you.
Okay.
So I expect that Mr. Nesteriak will speak for himself, but we did receive a memo from him this afternoon, and I think for purposes of this commission, probably the most important sentence is on the second page, where he says, "I do believe that this change combined with the other elements of the storm drainage system complies with the standards recommended by the state and common practice." So while they may not have a complete meeting of the minds in terms of the design, everybody may, 5 engineers in a room, they'll come up with different designs. I think they're in agreement that it conforms to the manual. So,
Do you have any comment with the changes and everything?
Did everybody have a chance to read that letter?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ran through it real quick.
So, it speaks for itself. Certainly that sentence is in that letter. I was hoping for a more low-impact design, but that being said, like Ms. Feinberg said, I do believe that it does comply with the recommendations are, although I do believe it's minimal. I did put in a handful of other items that, if an approval were to roll forward, I think it should be made conditional. I think they're minor, but I didn't have a chance to go over them with the applicant.
There seemed to be some conditions or whatever that was agreed upon in the memorandum that was provided to us dated the 8th, January 8th.
Those are those the ones that maybe the applicant
Yeah,
had
it was
provided?
back and forth between different departments.
A lot of the ones that I brought up in my latest letter are typical. I doubt they would
Okay.
have any
Did
issues
you-
with it, but
did
they
you
may
see
want
his
to speak to
memorandum?
that. Yeah,
Go
I've seen
through.
that. I've seen that through planning and zoning.
Okay.
I assume that hasn't changed. January 8th.
This is actually, you're talking about all of the things that we modified.
Yeah, it was agreements of what was going to happen.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the suggested conditions of approval.
Yeah.
They've had that as well.
Okay.
So if you have any questions about my letter, I'm happy to answer.
Guys have any questions right now?
No? I do not.
We could open up the public comment.
Well, like, they have made improvements with the hydrodynamic separators, I think.
Yes.
Over and above what they're required to do. Is that over and above? Or-
It's an opinion, or it's a matter of opinion, in my opinion, minimal, if it complies.
What's that?
It's minimum, but it complies with the state recommendation.
And those forms?
No, if you guys have any questions for the design team, we could ask them now, or we could open up the public
Questions?
hearing portion for public comment. If, yes, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to clarify, there are a few things, actually, most of the things in Mr. Nesteriak's letter, in my opinion, are more P and Z related. So just to keep that in mind in terms of attaching conditions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll open up the floor to public comment. If you have a wish to speak, you come up to the microphone, state your name, address, and state what you have to state. And please direct all your comments to the board and not to the design team, please.
Cynthia Zukis, 270 Pearl Street, Seymour. I didn't hear anything about, I know there was on delay of the Department of Environmental Protection. They were supposed to have an inspection, and that was going to be up to 8 weeks. So does this vote also go into a recognition without that report? Is one thing I wanted to know. And I see that he did some changes with the basins, because that was one of the things I was concerned about. But I'm also concerned, I know they're going to have the wetlands that is behind this area here. I know they're going to take a lot of the land, so you won't have that runoff going into wetlands. Now, being inlands and wetlands, is that going to change the existence of that wetlands now, and change that completely for all the foliage that is there and the animals or whatever that is using that area? I don't think we really went in. I know they had said that they're going to put like a fencing, and if any of the box turtles are there, they're going to just pick them up, put them over the fencing. But now if that water's going to dry out because you don't have the runoff from natural runoffs that are there now because of the grade of the land, is that going to change that part of the area? and change also what's going to happen with the filtration of any water that's going to be in that area. I know it's not with your department, but he had mentioned the fact that where the Spring Street, that entrance is going to be just blocked off just for emergency. Does that mean that they're going to keep that open now for all the construction trucks to go up there, or are they going to do that from Smith Street? So that's something I would hope they would look into, because I know the homeowners on Spring Street are not going to be very happy with that at all, because it's a lot of damage to the roads. Again, that swell part on where the snow development is going to be left off on, I'm more concerned not so much of the runoff, is the underground springs. Is that water now going to be all collected into the drainage pipes, or does some of that water still go into the ground? Because now you're still filling that area with more extra snow, which is going to create more drainage. Because like I said before, that Spring Street is a lot 30 feet below where that area is, and those springs are right underneath the street. If you go up there now, you'll see how the street is completely destroyed of all the frost, the freeze from the underground water. And you could see the water coming up from the road in some places because of that. I'm more concerned of it because they're going to dump all this snow in this area for drainage. Is that going to affect all those property owners, and who's going to be responsible of any damage to that area for the future? Mine is more future, but not runoff, it's underground water. Yes, the land up there, like you said, there's a lot of sand up area and ledge, and they did go down to 28 feet and then no water, but I believe that water is a lot lower, and because that ground is so much higher than Spring Street, I'm more concerned what's going to happen to Spring Street and the water going down into Pearl Street. This is where we get the flooding problems in the spring when the ground is still frozen. So is that going to be looked into it and prevented for the future? I'm concerned about that. Because there was changes, Mr. Nesteriak had wanted mostly open. I had also would like to have seen more open retention ponds, but I guess apparently they're going to try to keep it a couple. I'm not too sure exactly how they're doing that. Only because that will help with foliage, plants, and the wildlife that is there. Right now, if they're going to develop in the spring, if they'd like to get in there as soon as possible, springtime is when everything is mating and producing up there, and I'm more concerned about the wildlife and the animals and stuff. But hopefully we could still all work together. I'd like to see it work together because it looks like it could be improved, but yet it's going to be an eyesore because you're still having 11 buildings there. If we could compact it to 6 and put a little extra higher, because we've got 3 levels now, so what's one more level? I'd rather they go up than take all this land, because I don't see the 50% open land to help with water maintenance and for the water going into ponds below that area. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Can you get an opinion from the town engineer on this?
The only thing that the applicant may want to add, did you mention the fact that you changed 2 of the basins to above ground?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I might have not
you
been
did.
paying attention.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I apologize.
You did.
If that was mentioned, then,
And it's shown on the drawing.
yeah, so that was, my letter was based on that, so that is a change that they made. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, but that's all right.
No, that was it.
Did you want to respond to any of those comments now, or you want to wait to the end? Okay. Do we have any other public comment? Okay. Here's your opportunity.
I'm going to respond partially, and then I'll ask John Paul to respond. But the deep report, we did submit the report related to the box turtles, which I think that may be the one that Ms. Sukas was referring to. There'll be an additional permit that we have to obtain from the state, a stormwater management permit, and that doesn't happen until we're completely finished with municipal approvals. They won't even entertain it. But there is that level of review at a later date. John Paul, do you want to address
Just the snow melt, the snow shelf here was put in an effort to prevent surface water from flowing onto the neighbor's property, and that's the reason for this. This is a piped ditch, so the water that gets into this ditch is there's gonna be some minor infiltration, but the majority of the water is gonna get piped out into the catch basin. So the idea is not gonna exacerbate the situation. And just as a matter of course, and Brian and I talked about this when you do a development like this, a lot of the times, the groundwater situation, people downstroke will be experiencing groundwater issues because right now you have uncontrolled runoff. When you start to do stuff like this, all these buildings start to act like dams, and they start to pick up the groundwater and they funnel it someplace else into a catchment system, so that's collected in. It's been my experience that in 90% of these types of situations, the downstream groundwater problems improve rather than get worse. The other thing that she mentioned is about drainage into the wetlands on the southeast and southwest corners. We're not draining that way, because if we were draining that way, we'd be discharging that way. So there is no drainage from the site that presently goes that way. This curve of the road, this drains this way. So we're not interrupting anything that goes in there now. So we're not changing the runoff patterns, and that's part of our drainage report. So we're not changing any runoff patterns into the adjacent wetlands. What was there before is what there now. And I apologize.
In other words, the water, everything is going downhill, right?
Everything flows this way, yes, that's
So
correct.
it would not be feasible for comment to say that any water was going up
Correct.
against the
It would-
forces of gravity, right?
That's correct. It would have to buck grade to get there. It's not the way the drainage patterns presently work. Well, this corner a little bit, but
I don't know if it really makes a difference, but no, there's a high point where building, right here, there's a high point here, and this area does naturally flow to that wetland.
Yeah, but
which after this is done, it's going to go this way. Is it a big difference? No, but I just want to clarify
Yeah, no, and
that
that's
there
what I
is an
said.
area that is feeding that wetland.
but it's minor, and if it was,
It is minor.
if it was a larger wetland, then odds are we might have been using that as a discharge point because it would have been a natural discharge point. But it doesn't pay because you're
Well,
only
it's
talking
higher,
about an
it
area.
is higher than the site.
Yeah, you're only talking an area about that big that goes into this wetland.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Mike, any further questions? Tim?
I'm good.
I'd just like for the record to submit, we did modify that list of all of the modifications that we've made along the way, so I'd like to submit that for the record. It includes the modifications that Mr. Garcia discussed tonight.
Thank you.
I'm looking at my team, but I think that's all we had for you tonight.
Okay.
Unless you all have more for us.
Okay, just give us a minute to look this over. What would you guys like to do?
What do you recommend?
Well, we
Close
have,
the public hearing.
we
right?
could close the public hearing, and then we need to provide a decision to the applicant at the next meeting. Unless you have more questions, you want additional information, and we will leave it open.
Yeah,
So, what would you guys like to do?
just close it.
agree to close it.
Do we need, if we need additional information at the meeting, or if we need additional information while this process is going on?
While this process is
The
going on,
whole-
because once we close the public hearing.
I mean,
Then-
up until they're done with the project, or,
No,
no?
You
No.
can still stipulate
No.
anything else later.
right.
So if we keep the public hearing open,
Well, it's gonna push us off another month.
Yeah.
right now,
So what would you recommend?
I'll make a motion to close it.
I second the motion.
Mr. Chairman, before you all vote, it may make sense for us to go through Mr. Nesteriak's comments in a little bit more detail, just because
Certainly.
to the extent that some of these are P and Z versus in the wetlands, I'd
Okay.
hate to close it and then not
Okay.
be able to
Certainly,
discuss. So I apologize if this is a little bit.
not a problem.
So the first set of comments relates to earthwork and phasing comments, which fall within the planning and zoning regulations. I will say that I respectfully disagree with Mr. Nesteriak. When I read that section of the regulations, I see an exception for site plan, actually site plan or special permit or subdivision applications, that they don't fall within that section of the regs, on top of the fact that obviously it's an 830G application, but I didn't think that even if it wasn't, I didn't think it applied, and in any event, I think it's a P&Z matter. I don't know if you're in agreement on that.
Whether it's a P&Z matter?
Correct.
I think ultimately it's a P&Z matter, but I think it does affect wetlands because there's an airport operation crushing the processing that's going to be occurring, in some cases, very close to the wetland review area,
Mhm.
and ultimately could affect the downhill wetland. So I think it's something that you should consider. What I said in my letter is that the zoning regulations don't allow the processing to go into the property.
Conditions and enunciate a little bit, right?
Sorry. The zoning regulations don't allow processing materials within 300 feet of the property line. I think, I don't want to speak to you, their opinion is that that's for a special permit for earthwork process. And then maybe that's up to the decide. My point is, they have locations, there's one location that has crushing and processing right up against the property line, which is 40 feet away from a existing condo complex, and probably 25 feet from the proposed building that's going in, and who knows when that's going to be built, but literally 6 months ago, start the building process to happen. I don't think it's safe to be processing and crushing materials in residential property. So my recommendation is, and I'll just read verbatim my last sentence of the second paragraph. Due to proximity of the project to the adjacent residential areas, my professional opinion that crushing of materials should be limited to the requirements of this regulation as much as possible. I'm not trying to get into a legal battle by determining whether or not it's allowed on the property or not. I just think we should try to comply as much as we can to keep the residential aspects safe.
In other words, this would pertain to block crushing, right?
Yeah, no,
And
what I just said in the last 30 seconds is a planning and zoning issue. But the act of processing material is definitely something that should be considered by the law when it could impact wetlands. So, I just throw all that out there for you.
Could you show us on the map those areas that you have designated?
So I think what Mr. Mysteriak said is that this site was approved for development.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first phase of the condominiums over here.
Right, a greater kind of,
Yep.
what you guys saw.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They have a plan approval, they do not have a building permit, but they were in 6 months ago, supposedly gonna start, but they haven't. There is they actually got variances to come closer to this sideline. And it's, I think it's probably 25 feet from here, so I just think this needs to be moved.
Needs to be renewed.
Moved.
And what would that entail by requiring them to move that? Would they have to move machinery inward, block crushing material inward?
If they're going to identify crushing or processing areas, I just think they should get it away from the process.
I don't think that's a showstopper there,
No.
to move that
I
over.
don't think it's a big
Okay,
deal.
next item.
Great. I think the next item we covered, which was Mr. Nesteriak had requested some additional low-impact development standards, but was in agreement that we conform to stormwater management state's manual. So that one, I think, we can check off the box. A robust maintenance program. One of the conditions that we had suggested was the submission of a drainage maintenance agreement, which would be subject to your council's review, of course. So I think that we can tackle that one via condition. The intersection comments are definitely P and Z.
Yep.
Miscellaneous comments, the first one relating to riprap swale, I suppose that may be an IWC, or you think that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And it's just a clarification that the engineer.
It's just like a note.
Yep.
The next two, I think, are P and Z,
I think the third one is,
the pervious pavers. Okay.
and again, that's just a modification of the assuming that
I think the next one is inland wetlands, the no stockpiling. Okay. And then the next four I thought were P and Z. And then the fifth one I thought was inland wetlands. And then the last ones do you think the next one's P and Z or inland
next
wetlands?
one is the maintenance manual?
The soil erosion measures, the site monitoring.
Oh.
The maintenance manual I thought was inland wetlands.
I think the site monitor is both.
Okay.
And then, I would say community as well.
Okay. So then I suspect that most of these were just, final plans shall include kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that.
Okay.
Okay, great. I really am finished this time.
Okay. Okay, we'll go back to where we were. Would you like to,
We already have a
Close.
motion, we already have a motion, a second.
Yep.
Motion second.
is motion a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, close the public hearing, and we'll get ready for our next meeting.
After
See you
second.
later.
It's already after 7. You need a break, or you want?
I know, I'm good.
Or wait to,
Do we have
Don't
alternates?
have any? That's it.
we just wait for Jimmy to come back and